No, not yet.
Okay, I'm trying to see what I can do. Let me see. Ah,
I can see you now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being with us, but can we just wait a couple of more minutes? We're 5 minutes early.
Yeah, just wanted to check that it was fine and that it was working. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
How are you? Nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Wonderful to see you. Yeah, it's been so long. It's so great to see you looking wonderful. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. This is so much fun. Okay, fantastic. So I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Now that I see it's working, well, okay, good.
Chaya,
Yes,
you're still Joyce.
I'll change it. Every time I have to change it, I see I'm going to have to live in the middle. I'm going to a wedding. I'm going to be late for the wedding, but it's okay.
Okay.
Rename. Every time I'll have to rename you.
I don't know.
It's okay. My computer likes you.
As long as you like me, Chaya, I'm happy.
I love you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
The
Excellent.
Die. Okay. I'll change it again.
Can you have on my back and me?
We're just going to wait a few minutes for the Rebbitzin to come on.
I'm back to me.
Okay.
Okay.
We're on for an hour. Just checking with you the timing. Yes, Rebbitzin, Joshua? It's an hour?
Yeah. With time for questions and answers, please.
Included in that hour.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
we go over, it doesn't matter. Go ahead. We are very happy to have with us today Rebbitzin Chaya Hinda Allen. I think you're going to enjoy it. I've done the course with her and I loved it. So please, over to you.
Okay, I'm so thrilled to be back together with Rebbitzin Shashua. Our first meeting was in your gracious home.
Yeah.
And then we had a lot of fun in a series that we had for the seniors in Beit Shemesh.
Right.
And I always recall that particular group with such fondness because they were unencumbered by a lot of the self-doubt of younger people, and they were very just very open about their questions, and they couldn't care less about what people were thinking of them. You know, it's not like the lot of youngsters, like 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds, that were very shy about asking their questions, but everybody was just so themselves, and so it was very refreshing. So I just want to say that they have a special place in my heart, that group of seniors in Beit Shemesh. Really remembered them, and I often just remember a lot of different stories that came up at that time. Okay, so what are we talking about today? So basically, the idea that I present They're ideas about emunah and faith, ideas about bitachon, which is trust, and under a title that I call Think Positive, because a lot of the time we wonder to ourselves, I don't even know what to think. And so the Torah encourages us, think positive. What does that mean, think positive? How can we decide to think positive? And why should a person think positive when the world isn't always positive? And so that's the basic question. If the world isn't always positive and things don't always work out the way that we would like, then why bother thinking positive? Maybe we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment. And how do we know that that's a Torah way? Maybe the Torah wants us to be realistic. And maybe being realistic is not necessarily positive. So that's the question that we're going to be addressing today. Okay. First of all, let's begin with one of my favorite sources, which is the Nesiva Shalom. That's the previous Slonim Rebbe. In the introduction, in one of the introductions to a volume of the Nesiva Shalom, he brings down and he says, when a Yid says, Hashem Yazor, Hashem will help, on what basis do we say those words? It's the same thing as saying think positive, to say that Hashem will help. Who says Hashem will help? How can we say Hashem will help? How can we say that Hashem's going to do something for us to help us? So he says like this. He says the source of a Yid's bitachon, the source of our being able to trust in Hashem and able to say that Hashem will help, comes from our knowledge that we are children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he brings down the Midrash, the Chazal, that Rabbi Meir said, Bein kach ubein kach bonai hein, that whether we have done Averis or whether we haven't done Averis, whether we are pure as the Chida Kindalach who never did Averis, or whether we're not, whether we've lived and we've done whatever we've done, and then we wonder, well, maybe because Hashem knows all that I've done, maybe he won't want to help me. Rabbi Meir says, Bein kach ubein kach, whether we're in these kinds of group that never did, or whether we're in the group that did and is trying to do tshuva or hasn't managed it yet, Bonai Haim, we are still HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children. And any thinking individual has to, at some point, come to terms with the fact that I'm not the ideal self that I would like to present to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm less than that. I don't deserve to ask, or I don't deserve to hope. I don't deserve, and maybe that's why Hashem won't do for me something, because he's going to see my imperfections. He's going to remember. We know that Hashem doesn't forget everything, and we talk on Rosh Hashanah about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is remembering everything. So Hashem remembers everything that I've done. So with all of that memory stored away, and Hashem doesn't have limited memory like we do. We might prefer to forget things, but Hashem doesn't forget anything. So with all of that, how can I then come along and say, Hashem Yazor, Hashem's going to help me? Every thinking individual is going to be held back by the knowledge, well, I know what I've done, so maybe Hashem won't help me because of what I've done. And so the Nesiva Shalom says it's a mitzvah to repeat this mission. It's a mitzvah to repeat that Bein kach ubein kach bonai hein. This halacha of Rabbi Meir, and that actually the Chazal established the halacha like Rabbi Meir, meaning it's a halacha that has relevance in Jewish law, that whether we have sinned or whether we haven't sinned, we are still called Hashem's children. We are kruim bonim. And so, continues the Nesiva Shalom, and as children, we are sure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us and will have mercy upon us as a loving father for his beloved children. And that vadai, that certainly, vadai yirachem olai, certainly he will have compassion on me. So again, the language is very careful. This is why I want to focus on the language that the Nesiva Shalom mentions over here. He doesn't say vadai yaseh ma sheni rotzeh, for sure Hashem's going to do whatever I want. That's not what's being promised over here. But vadai yirachem olai, he will certainly have compassion upon me. That this is the source of our trust, Hashem's compassion upon us. that we're trusting in Hashem's compassion. So it's, when we say Hashem will help, it's based on the fact that Hashem is compassionate, we are his children, and Hashem's compassion is certainly aroused over his children. Now, we might think, but how can I rely on a compassion that I haven't actually experienced too much of? In fact, maybe over the course of my long, short, medium lifetime already, I've had experiences of judgment. Maybe I've had experiences of really difficult times. Maybe my overwhelming experience has not been one of compassion. And so, you know, it's okay to give that class to 17-year-olds in high school where they're still starry-eyed and yeah, you know, life is going to be wonderful. But not every experience of life feels so wonderful. And, you know, we're speaking to a large group of women over here. Everybody's been through all kinds of different things. And so I kind of, you know, not everybody can say to themselves, oh yes, my life has been just one long story of Hashem's compassion. And so where do we go with that? And so the Nesivos Shalom explains that actually, even if what we have experienced until now was not Hashem's great compassion, we had different kinds of experiences. It's very possible that we've also had experiences with compassion, but they've also been blended with other kinds of experiences that we created in a narrative to about ourselves that wasn't compassionate. Meaning, let's say somebody had an experience that felt that it was a negative, they felt it was a negative experience. Somebody didn't have the money for something. And they experienced that as, why is Hashem punishing me? In fact, this happened in Brisk. The Briskerov was approached by a delegation of important people. What had happened was there was a very, very wealthy Gvir, very, very wealthy man in Brisk. And all of a sudden he lost all of his money. And everybody was saying, why is he being punished like this? Why is the Midas Hadin, the attribute of judgment, being stretched out against this man? He only did good. And so the Briskerov said, first of all, you know, let's examine his ledgers, bring out all the finances, all the financial records, and let's just see what went on. They examined all of his financial records, and they found that the only thing he did wrong was giving double the amount of tzedakah that he was supposed to. He gave massive amounts of tzedakah, and more than is advisable, and they found that was the only financial misdeed that he had committed. And so the Briskerov, again, when he was approached by this delegation, they were saying, why is he being punished like this? He said, your premise is wrong. You're assuming that this is punishment. You're assuming that it's the trait of judgment that's being expressed over here, but it's actually not. Just as a child goes to junior school, and in junior school they learn junior grade maths, and in junior school they learn junior grade languages and sciences, and then the child goes up to high school. And one of my children actually was just saying, you know, I don't want to go to Kita Hey. I'm quite happy to go back to Kita Aleph again. It's so much fun. It's so much easier in Kita Aleph. But you know what? When you're ready actually for Kita Hey, and that's what you need to do. So it just has to get a little bit harder. And Kita Hey is where you are. That's where all your friends are going. That's where it's appropriate for you. You're not going back to Kita Aleph, even if you'd like an easy ride. So for some of us, we like the easy ride of life just being as it is. But the Briskerov explained, this man did so well in junior that now he's being moved up to high school. Now Hashem is giving him the opportunity to serve him from a different perspective, to serve him from poverty. And it wasn't a punishment, but actually it's just a greater opportunity to, it opened up many more possibilities for him. What actually ended up happening is that this man, once he'd lost his fortune and his business is closed, he went into, he went back to learning. He went back to learning, and he became a Talmid Chacham, and his daughters ended up marrying big Talmidei Chachamim. And so many years later, the Briskerov pointed out to everybody, look, if he would have stayed in business, his daughters would have married businessmen, and his family would have been businessmen. But as it was, Hashem didn't want to let him live in the business world because he was so devoted to Hashem. It was appropriate for him to move into the fast track of Avodas Hashem And in order to do that, he had to lose his money. So was it Midas Hadin or was it Midas Arachamim? Was that an outgrowth of Hashem's judgment, or was it actually his compassion? So the same is true for many of our experiences. They may have, at the time, felt like they were punishment. And so many women talk to me that about challenges in their life that they say, I feel like I'm being punished. And what we need to understand is that every experience that we go through, not only our experiences, but those of other people and those throughout history, are open to interpretation. And history is open to the narrative of whoever is telling that particular story. If you hear a story being told by a Litvak, you're going to hear the Litvish portion of Jewish history. If you're going to hear the story told by a Chassid, you're going to hear the Chassidish portion. If you're going to hear Jewish history being told by an anti-Semite, you're going to hear a very different kind of narrative of Jewish history. And so everything that we experience is open to the debate of how are you going to narrate this story. So when the elders of this community were coming to Reb Chaim with this story, they were telling a narrative of punishment. And that's possibly how the man himself felt. But when Reb Chaim told the story, he gave us a whole different spin on that narrative. He said, it's not a narrative of judgment, it's a narrative of compassion. And so many of our life experiences we may have experienced as, we may have told ourselves at the time, I'm being punished, but it may not have been accurate. So one of the things that we can do is at least open up doubt. Maybe it wasn't judgment that I experienced. Allow myself to have some healthy question in my mind. Maybe it was actually compassion that I didn't understand. We have to be humble enough to recognize we don't have all the facts. We don't know exactly what Hashem was planning over here. And it's very possible that his compassion will become revealed. The second part of what the Nesiv Shalom was explaining there about how our trust as Jews is based on the foundation of our being Hashem's children, of being his beloved children, that we can rely on his compassion, is that we can change our relationship. That it's not a fixed relationship, it's not set, but actually our relationship with Hashem develops all the time. And we have the lion's share of what actually makes that relationship into whatever it is. When we think about other relationships in our lives, whether it's friend, sibling, parents, children, spouse, neighbors, any kind of relative, at a certain point we kind of feel like, oh, this is what the relationship is. This is what it is. And the truth is that at any point we can invest more in a relationship, and most likely, if it's a healthy person that we're in this relationship with, they will respond to our investment. Many times I encourage women to build their female friendships. At different times in our life, if we have been busy with husband and children, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with an empty nest, or if I'm in touch with women who have been again widowed at different times, or divorced, or whatever kind of life situation there is, we find ourselves in a situation where, okay, now what? Building close friendships is of such vital importance. And women say, well, I don't have those friends in my life. And so I say to them, okay, you may have had them. Now it's time to reinvest in those relationships. Can you pick up? And we do a little brainstorming. Are there people that you went to school with that now you can pick up a relationship with? I remember, when I first came to Eretz Yisrael when I was 18, and I left a bunch of my high school friends behind. There was no email, there was no Zoom, there was no way to stay in touch with people so much, and traipsing to the post office to write letters just seemed a little bit beyond me when I was already writing to my parents or grandparents, and I didn't keep in touch with people the way that I would have liked to. And over the last 5 years, Baruch Hashem, I've been able to pick up with old friends. And so we do a little brainstorming. Are there any old friends? Old friends are like gold. And They know you from so long. They knew you when you were just forming your personality. They're so valuable. It's never too late to just decide to reignite a friendship that was good 20, 30 years ago, because old friends are often quite happy to pick up. They're possibly in civil life situations, possibly also looking to just, reconnect with old friends in different kinds of ways. And there's a lot less of that getting to know you stage in a new friendship. When it's an old friend that already knows you, they know where you come from. They know that you're basically normal. There's just a lot that is already in place when we're dealing with old friends. And so if we then put time and energy into investing, and as it says in Pirkei Avos, Keneh lecha chaver, buy yourself a friend. Do whatever you can do to make sure that you have a friend. If you have to send gifts, if you want to treat them out to coffee, if you want to invest in time, give them the time. That means listen to them. Yes, we all want to be listened to, but part of our investment in friendship is being there to listen to another person. Most people, if you offer to listen to them, if you show interest in their lives and ask them questions about themselves, most people can't resist talking about themselves for a little bit and will feel very complimented that you're interested in them. And that's one way to really invest in a relationship and take it to a level where it wasn't before. And then we gain and they gain and everybody gains around that. So just as we can do that in our interpersonal relationships, and again, just one little note, there are some unhealthy people that no matter what you invest in them, they're like a black hole, and it's never going to be enough, and you're not going to feel satisfied because the person is always just going to sap more and more and more of your energy. So just to watch out for that. Don't get sucked into relationships where there just isn't that kind of payback, and they may not be a healthy person for whatever reasons. Okay, so those are not the relationships to invest in. Don't be tempted to try and save such a person. Let the next person save them. If you're interested in investing in a relationship, that's going to be a partnership. It's going to be a two-way relationship. Invest in a relationship where there's also feedback, where the person shows that they're also interested in you. Okay, so just as by investing more of ourselves, we can shift a relationship from very low gear into a higher gear, that's also the case with our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem has created our relationships in this world to mirror and reflect to us our relationship to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rav Gifta, in his introduction to Shir HaShirim, says that a person cannot experience the divine because Hashem is a kind of a theoretical being. We don't experience him directly unless we have experienced interpersonal relationships in this world. And he brings down that when Yaakov Avinu was reunited with Yosef Tzaddik, at that moment when they fell upon each other crying, Yaakov Avinu took that moment to say Kriya Shema, because Yaakov Avinu understood that every relationship that I have in this world and the emotions that I have in my relationships in this world, they're only given to me in order to experience a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so this moment of exquisite joy and relief of being reunited with my beloved son, that moment is a moment that I cannot waste, and that emotion that I'm feeling, I'm going to use it to say Kriya Shema. I'm going to use it to enhance my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, because the more that I invest in my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the more he's going to respond to me. Just as when I invest in a friendship, in a relationship down here, I'm in a healthy relationship, that person is going to respond to my investment in that person. So when I invest in my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and here Yaakov Avinu teaches us an investment of emotion. When I invest that emotion in my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is going to respond and show himself more to me. This is also brought down in the Medrash about Avram Avinu. First, Avram was not visited by Kadosh Baruch Hu first, but Avram Avinu sought out Hashem. Avram Avinu said, I have to find you. I have to find you. There has to be a Rebbeinu Shalom here. And at a certain point, when Avram Avinu was just looking for Hashem, as it were, the Medrash says that Hashem peeked out and said, here I am. He gave him a little bit of a wave, a little bit of a wink. And then when Avram saw him a little bit, Avram went further. So I need to see you more. I need to see you more. Hashem, Avram invested more in that relationship. And then Hashem peeked out a little bit more. And that's how the relationship became more intense, much, much more. So the Nesiv Shalom tells us, how do we do this? What is the practical way that we can enable us to feel like beloved children of Hashem, if that wasn't our experience until now? I mean, what you're saying is very nice, that if a person thinks that the bein kach or bein kach, whether I've sinned or whether I haven't, I'm the beloved child of Hashem. But if that wasn't my experience, if that wasn't my inner narrative until then, if I feel that I've been punished, then how all of a sudden am I supposed to just tell myself that I'm the beloved child of Hashem? I don't feel it. How do I do it? So the Nesiv Shalom explains, when we use our imagination to imagine Hashem's love for us and to imagine ourselves as a beloved child to a Father who is compassionate and only wants our good in every situation. These are his exact words. We have to imagine that we are a beloved child of a Father who loves us and only wants our good in every single situation. When we can imagine that, we root in our mind and in our hearts, meaning use our imagination to be able to think in those ways. Then, Gam milamala, he says, then also from above, Hashem will respond to those feelings that we generate through the way that we think. The Baal Shem Tov says on the pasuk in Tehillim, Hashem tzilcha, Hashem is your shadow. Hashem tzilcha yad yaminecha, we say, Hashem is your shadow. So just as, let's see if there's a shadow behind me right now. You see the shadow down the wall? Okay, just as the shadow moves according to the movements of our hand or whatever, or our bodies, wherever we are, so Hashem, as it were, is like a shadow to us, that however we move towards him or further away from him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds to that. The Gra and the Ben Ish Chai both say the same thing. It's not only the Baal Shem Tov, but everybody says that on that pasuk. That Hashem is our shadow means that just as a shadow moves as we do, so Hashem closely follows our feelings. And when we feel something down here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds to that. This is brought down in so many different ways. I'll just bring another couple of examples. The Zohar brings down that when a Jew goes down here with sadness, this brings down judgment from above. But when a Jew goes down here with happiness, with a shining countenance, then this brings down a shining countenance from above. So basically, trach good, v'zayin good. When you think good, it will be good. That the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, or that when you smile, Hashem will give you more to smile about. These are actually, this is the Torah way that Hashem responds to us. Where the Gemara says, "B'derech she'adam rotzei lelech, the way a person wants to go, he is led." What does it mean he wants to go? The way he chooses. If I choose to be miserable, and actually we have to be responsible enough to say it's a choice. Or if I choose to be happy, if I go with a smile, even if it doesn't mean I have a smile plastered to my face all day long, but it means I put in effort to incrementally move myself towards happiness, even if it's challenging. But I make that choice to take care of myself. I do the things that are going to enable me to feel more happy. I'm going to get enough rest. I'm going to get enough sleep. I'm going to get enough good nutrition in my body. I'm going to get enough exercise. I'm going to get enough friendship in my life and other people's relationships. I'm going to do things that are fun for me. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep myself feeling the best that I can. Then Hashem is going to respond to that. And so the Sifra Shalom says, when we down here allow ourselves to imagine ourselves as a beloved child of Hashem, so Hashem will respond to that. And then we will experience, it'll become manifest in our lives, more of the compassion of a parent than was experienced before. Just as if I pick up a relationship with a friend of mine from 25 years ago, if I don't contact her, then when she comes to Israel, she's not going to contact me. But if I'm in touch with her and she comes to her, she says, hi, I'm going to be in Jerusalem this week, and I say, let's meet at the Kaisel, and we go out for dinner together, that's because both of us reinvested in that relationship. And so we can kind of let relationships be neglected. And many of us may neglect that relationship with Hashem, not even realizing that there's room to invest and that there's room to change, and that at any moment we can pick up that relationship and we can make it into something much more satisfying and much more real. And the ways in which you can do that, or it's our choice. The Rambam says that at every moment we choose whether to strengthen the bonds that we have with Hashem and therefore experience more Siyata Dishmaya, more Hashgacha Pratis in our lives, or we can loosen that relationship, we can neglect it to the degree that we don't even feel Hashem's Hashgacha Pratis in our lives anymore. But what they're all saying is that it's our choice. If a person says, well, I don't feel Hashem in my life, the answer is, so what are you going to do about it? And so the question is, so what can I do about it then? What am I supposed to do? So the answer begins with emotion, and the answer begins with how we use our imagination. These might not have been the natural choices. Like we might have thought that, well, maybe I'm supposed to do more mitzvahs. Maybe I'm supposed to spend more time having Mesiras Nefesh for something that's really hard. But that's not, that's all good. In Elul, absolutely, we are trying to get more schusim and we're trying to be the best person we can be. But it's not about improving the quantity of what we do a lot of the time. It's about quality. And as we know, Rahmana Liba Boy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the heart. What's the heart? It means our feelings. He wants our involvement. He wants us to care. If I would go and meet my friend, which I did, in the old city, and we sat there for lunch, and I was actually pretty uninterested, and I was on my phone most of the time talking to other people, and I was just sort of watching the view, then she might have gone away with the feeling that, well, I guess she didn't really want to be with me in the first place. But if I sit there and I'm interested in her and I ask her questions and I answer her questions at length and explain what I'm doing, and she shares with me and I share with her, and we reestablish a rapport and interest in each other, then each of us can go away and say, well, that was satisfying. I'm interested in that person, and I showed emotion, she shared emotion, and we were able to share feelings together. The same is true with Hashem. Hashem wants our feelings. Rav Shach Zitzal said that even in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Ikar Hashras Hashchina, the main place where the Shechina was felt, was B'libasim Shal Yisrael, in the hearts of Klal Yisrael. So what does it mean that Hashem is felt in our hearts? It means our feelings are directed to Hashem, as Yaakov Avinu directed his feeling of love for his son towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means that we need to use our feelings, be aware of our feelings, generate feelings, and use them in service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we arouse our feelings? This is the essence of basically what I teach, is if we want to arouse our feelings, Rav Dessler brings down the altar from Kelm. He says, Yesh Eitza Achas. There's one piece of advice of how to use our feelings in service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Siurei Halev, using pictures of the mind. Basically, he means using our imagination. The word imagination, as you can hear, is based on image, based on images. But, and I want to say this right away, not everybody's imagination works in pictures. Many women that I've spoken to, their imagination does not work in pictures, but it works in sounds. They're within their mind, within themselves, they're hearing things. They're not seeing pictures, but they hear, whether they're hearing music, whether they're hearing natural sounds, whether they're hearing conversation of their own voice. That's how their imagination works. Some people, their imagination does work mostly in pictures. All of our imaginations, meaning each one of us, our own imagination, generally works with all of the different senses. We can imagine a whole scene with pictures, sound, feelings, sensations. We can do a lot in our imagination, but all of us tend to have one stronger than the other. And then there's been a very small portion, like less than 5 women, whose imagination works only in conversations. That whatever they're imagining, like, for example, I was talking to a certain woman who, she has 3 or 4 unmarried, older single children. And of course, this was a lot of stress for her, a lot of worry. And we were coming up with ways that she could think positively about this. Again, relying on the fact that Hashem Yazor. We're trusting that Hashem is going to help, which means we're going to trust that we hope that they're going to get married. And so I encouraged her to imagine, what would it be like? The Shabbos, Sheva Brachas of the last of those 4 children, where all of them are married, and they're all now coming together, and she's imagining the Erev Shabbos, preparing for that Shabbos when everybody's there. And in my mind, which is a very visual mind, I was imagining the faces of the couples and what they would look like. And this is what I was kind of imagining. And I asked her, what are you imagining? And she said, I'm on the phone getting recipes of what to make. Because her imagination works in conversations. And so that was it's always a thrill to me to discover how different people's minds work, because that's the tools of my trade, basically, everyone's minds. So she gave me a wonderful insight into how her mind was working. And so we just went with that, and we just discussed how she felt as she was talking excitedly to all the different people she was going to be speaking to that Erev Shabbos, and it helped her to feel more hopeful when she could imagine that day. Okay? And Baruch Hashem, I think 3 out of 4 are married now. So Baruch Hashem, a lot of these things do help, because Rav Yosef Albo, in his Sefer, he lived in Spain at the time of the time when the church was demanding that Judaism produce people who could debate their representatives. And Rav Yosef Albo, who wrote the Sefer Ha'ikarim, he was chosen to debate the representatives of the church at the time. And his arguments were so strong that they left them alone for a very long time afterwards. So Rav Yosef Albo, in his Sefer Ha'ikarim, he says that part of the reason why we don't receive the good that we would like to receive is because we don't hope for it as much as we should. Because if we're not hoping, that actually could prevent us from receiving the good that we would like. Most of the people that I share that with have never heard that before. We always kind of thought that hope was an optional extra, and really only for those who were looking with like Pollyanna kind of glasses, and not for people who live in the real world. Why would you hope if you're only going to get disappointed? But what Rav Yosef Albo is sharing with that fundamental point that he's making is that if we don't hope, we're actually missing one of the major ingredients that would help to bring to us that which you would like. And part of the reason we can understand is, if the princess of the king is not hoping that the king is going to give her whatever she wants or whatever she needs, then either something is wrong with her relationship with the queen and the king, or she's forgotten who she is. But when we recognize who we are, when we know our relationship with the king, with Hashem, when we know who we are, and when we believe in that relationship, and the Siva Shalom says, every Jew has to believe that he's close to Hashem. We have to believe that we're close. When we believe that we're close, and we know who we are, that we're the princess, then why shouldn't Hashem do that? Why wouldn't Hashem want to do that? The language of Yosef Albo is, Ki tamed Hashem rotze latet. For Hashem always wants to give to us. Sometimes there are really good reasons why we shouldn't get something, such as when this rich man, when he lost all of that money, there's a really good reason why. Hashem had some real good stored away for him instead of those riches. So we don't always know when something is withheld, why it is. But tamed Hashem rotze latet, always Hashem wants to give good, and our job is to hope. Our job is to think good. Our job is to have an optimism born of trust in Hashem's love for us. And how to do it then? Again, going back to what we began to speak about, what Rav Dessler brings down from the altar of Kelm. is Tzirei Halev, through learning how to use our imagination. Our imagination, I use an allegory that it's a little bit like a wild garden. We tend to organize our homes, our kitchens, our cupboards and wardrobes and shelves. We're very good at organizing that, but when it comes to organizing our brain, we're like, leave that alone, you know, I don't want to get inside my brain. I don't want to mess with my mind. And so we tend to leave our minds with weeds, with all kinds of untended, wild thoughts just multiplying. And we don't realize that our minds can be cultivated, our minds can be protected from the weeds, that we can actually choose the gorgeous plants, shrubs, and trees that we could plant in the garden of our mind. We could make our minds really, really nice places to be. If we don't enjoy being by ourselves, frequently it's because we don't like what's going on in our minds. A lot of the time, we're listening to a narrative that we didn't even choose into, but it's just our default setting. The default narrative in my mind could be, I'm being punished, I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough. I messed up here and I messed up there. And the longer we've been here, the more items we have on our list of where I failed. And so we could be ruminating about those failures, and we could be ruminating about fear for the future. The top negative thought patterns are fear, worry, guilt, despair, low self-esteem, blame, and there's another one that will come to me. Let me see again. Worry, fear, guilt, low self-esteem, despair, blame, guilt. Did I say guilt? And I think guilt, okay? So guilt is guilting myself, blaming myself. Blame is thoughts about blaming other people, either for what was or for what won't be or for what is. A lot of fear for the future, despair that it can never change, worry about what's going to be. This is where we find ourselves in our mind. Well, I wouldn't want to be in such a garden. And I'm sure that none of you would like to be in that garden either. The garden that we could choose to walk into is a garden where there is lots of love, release of grudges, release of demands of other people, but healthy responsibility, loving relationships, interest, curiosity, gratefulness, happiness, connection, you know, okay, we can go on and on with all of the positive, patience. There's so many positive things that we can have in this world, but with all of that negative crowding in our mind, then we don't know how to get out of it. And when all of us were children, I know this was when I was a child, it was thought scientifically that the brain is what it is. It kind of matures around 17, 18, and at that point it begins to shrink, and the brain is what it is, and that it can't be changed. That's basically what it is. And so we tend to think that about our mind and our thoughts as well, that basically that's who I am, that's how I think. And people come to me and they say, but I come from a long line of Hungarian warriors. Like that's my Yerusha. This is my heritage. And what we can teach ourselves is that it doesn't have to be. If I decide I don't want to continue the chain of this long line of Hungarian warriors, I prefer to be an optimistic, trusting person who I am today. That goes back authentically much further back to Avram Avinu, Sarah Imenu, Rivka Imenu. I want to continue the heritage of my ancestors. I can do it. There is a branch of science called neuroplasticity. It's the study of the brain and how it actually regenerates and how it changes. They did a study, we're going back now probably over 15, 20 years. And whenever I say a number, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because in general, I'm much more comfortable talking about things that are eternal than I am about things that have a number to them. So I generally get numbers wrong. But there was a study done quite a long time ago already of London taxi drivers. And what they did is they examined their brains and then compared them with the brains of non-taxi drivers. And what they found was the part of the brain that remembers details, for example, the map of London, where they were driving, the names of streets, and the details of how to get from place to place, and all of the shortcuts that the cabbies would know, was much more highly developed. It was much larger than that part of the brain in other people that didn't need to remember all of those kinds of detail. And they were stunned by this revelation because it proved that the brain changes according to what we use it for. And so what they discovered is that when we think something, it creates a neural pathway in the brain. And that the more we think it, the stronger that pathway gets. And the thicker the connection becomes. So in the London cabbies, the parts of the brain that linked addresses and the map and all of the timing and all of the details that they needed to use on a daily basis in order to drive with confidence all around London, those parts of the brain were enlarged. I mean, in a healthy way, they weren't swollen or anything, but they just were so much larger. And so whatever we've used our brains for, we have created neural pathways in the brain for those thoughts. So if a person has been thinking their whole life, as women come to me and they say, I always go back to that thought, I'm being punished. That's where I go. I just spoke to a woman the other day who was saying that whenever something goes not the way I want, or whenever I'm hurt or disappointed, I think that I'm being punished for something. So she has a neural pathway in the brain for that thought. Again, it's her narrative. It's not the truth. It's her feeling. It feels true because that's what she's experiencing today. But that's not the truth. It's not Hashem's truth. It's her experiential truth. So what we can do for ourselves is actually learn new truths. We can create new neural pathways in our brain. And so if Dessler says to us, how can we pass a test? And in this case, I'm talking about a test of how to think. How can we change our neural pathways? And so he says in Michtav Eliyahu, he says a person needs to prepare themselves in their mind a number of times to imagine what will be instead. So I can imagine myself in a situation where something is not the way that I wanted, okay? Let's say the phone call with my daughter didn't go the way I wanted, or I didn't get the sum of money into my bank when I hoped, or whatever it is. I can imagine any kind of disappointing situation. And I could imagine how I might automatically go to that thought of, wow, I'm being punished for this. What did I do wrong? Why is Hashem upset with me? Why is he doing this to me? And because that's how I know, that's the thought pattern, that my default setting. And then I could think to myself, I could imagine that in that situation, I will say to myself, just a minute, Chayinda. You are Hashem's beloved child, no matter what you've done. And Hashem wouldn't hold back from you good just because you're not perfect. Because if that was the case, you'd never get anything because you're so imperfect. And I don't have to be perfect to get Hashem's goodness, because Hashem gives Barachamav. Rachamav al kol masav, his compassion is spread upon all of his children. And if Hashem wants to teach me and guide me and draw me back to B'tshuva Shalem, there's many ways of encouraging me to do that. And he's not going to withhold specific things that I need in my world in order to do that. Hashem doesn't punish in those kinds of ways. Hashem guides. And if I say, and I just want to interject another very fascinating thought, it's brought down that even if a person experiences something that could be, let's say, a punishment, even if a person experienced something that maybe was midas hadin, and they say to themselves, this has come ba'ahava, this has come to teach me to connect to Hashem ba'ahava, then min hashamayim, they agree with him. Then from heaven, they would say, yes, this has come only to elevate you and to draw you closer with love. And then it no longer is a punishment, and it can be changed. It can be changed. The Ben Yehoyada, who is the Ben Ish Chai on the Gemara, brings down the story that we're all familiar with of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, who went out on a journey, and he took with him a donkey and a fire and a chicken. And he tried to go and find lodgings in a little hamlet in the middle of a forest, and nobody would let him come in. He said, Kol ma dabir rachman letav avid, whatever the merciful one does is for the good. And he went out into the forest, to sleep because he couldn't find a place to stay there, and a lion came and ate the donkey, and a cat came and ate his chicken, and a strong wind came and blew out the candle. And at every point, Rabbi Akiva says, when he expressed this story to his Talmidim and telling them, at every point he says, and when the candle blew out, I said, Kol Madav Abid Rahman Alatav Abid, everything that a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the Merciful One does is for the good. And he repeated this phrase over and over again throughout the telling of the story. So the Ben Yehoyada asks, why did Rabbi Akiva repeat this so many times in the telling of the story? He could have just said at the end of the story. And every time something happened, I said, Kol Madav Rahman Alatav Abid, everything the Merciful One does is for the good. Why did he have to repeat it so many times? The Ben Ish Chai answers, because whenever he said it, he wanted to give over the lesson that saying it actually made it good. The saying of the words, everything the Rebbeinu Shalom does is for the good, made that it was going to be good. He could have said, oh, what did I do that Hashem killed my donkey? What did I do that Hashem killed my chicken? Why did Hashem blow out my candle? Why didn't Hashem let me get brought into this hammer? Why does he hate me so much that I have to sleep in a forest, cold, alone, in danger? Rabbi Akiva could have said that, but he didn't. And every time he said, everything Hashem does is for the good. And through those words, explains the Ben Ish Chai, through saying that, his words had a creative power to make it good. Because when we rely on Hashem's compassion, and we say, I'm a beloved child of Hashem, it has to be good. It has to be good. I don't know why, but I'm going to say, everything that the Merciful One does is for the good. Saying those words make it good. And the end of the story was that bandits fell upon the town. Everybody there was taken captive. The house was burned down. And Rabbi Akiva was saved. And he understood. Now, we don't need the planes to crash and everybody to die in order for us to recognize. There was some good in it. And sometimes we might not see what's the good. And the story that came to Reb Chaim, they did see the good so many generations later. We're not always privy to what was good. But in our imagination, we can tell ourselves. So again, we can practice saying to ourselves, I don't know why this happened right now, but certainly it's good. I am the beloved child of a compassionate Father who always wants my good. I may not feel it the first time. I may not feel it the second time. But when I imagine doing it, this is what Rav Dessler tells us. If I can imagine that scene, when it's not happening right now, when I'm not in the moment of Nisayan, when I could imagine that taking place and imagine arousing within myself that feeling of trust, a feeling that I can rely on Hashem's love. I can rely on Hashem's compassion. I can rely on the fact that He wants only good for me. Again, all of those phrases may have just set off all kinds of lights and questions inside your mind. And I'm going to stop in just a minute now for 4 questions that come up, because those phrases will be very triggering. Okay, I'm sure we've opened up a lot of different aspects of questioning, but I can answer whatever questions that I have. I can allow myself to come up with answers to those questions. I can ask until I get answers, so that at that moment in my mind, I could say, okay, I can rely on Hashem's.
Rebbetzin, sorry, can you please unmute yourself? I'm sorry. Rebbetzin, can you unmute yourself? Can you try now, please? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, just a moment. Will you try now, please? Will you try now, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Okay.
No problem.
Go ahead.
Okay, fine. So when we can imagine ourselves in that situation and prepare for ourselves, and again, Rav Dessler says all of this, prepare for ourselves all of the answers that we're going to need for that moment of trial. Prepare for ourselves a knowledge of who Hashem is and His love for us. When we learn the psukim in Toma Devara of Mikal Kamocha Noisa Avon, the traits of mercy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of compassion, and we remember that's who He is to me. He is a compassionate, beloved parent, or some people have a very hard time with imagining themselves as Hashem as a parent. So I encourage people to imagine Hashem as a loving coach. He is our coach. He is a beloved friend. Shir Hashirim is filled with the Moshe of Hashem as our beloved, the one who is closest to us, our friend and our close one. The more that we can arouse in our mind and imagination the knowledge of Hashem, that that's who he is for me, that I can rely on his compassionate love for me. At that moment of trial, I can imagine that I'm creating in my mind a new mental pathway. I'm creating in my mind a new way of thinking about Hashem, and I can create for myself a new default setting. That positive way of thinking about Hashem will become part of my brain, part of my mind, part of who I am. And no matter how old we are, we can now, in our generation, teach an old dog new tricks. We can learn how to do it. We can actually change our brain. And this is the greatest news. And so the way that I choose to do it is through guided imagery. That's what I teach, is how to guide our minds to think those things. And with practice, we can, this is what women have told me, is you've changed my default setting. I no longer go automatically to worry, fear, guilt, blame, low self-esteem, despair, and all of that stuff. But now my default goes to cautiously optimistic, happy, grateful, forgiving, patience. All of these, it's like a smorg of wonderful feelings that we can live with instead of those difficult, challenging feelings. And so we could enjoy living in a beautiful garden of our mind instead of living in a really overgrown ditch, which is often what we've made of our minds for ourselves. Okay, I'd like to open for questions.
Okay, that was beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Can you unmute yourself? Shelly, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I just told them.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and put them to the Rebbitzin.
I'd love to hear your question.
By the way, it was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad. Thank you for that. Okay, good. Any questions? Okay. Okay,
It was
good.
very clear.
Oh, good.
That's what made it so beautiful.
Thank you so much from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Ah, Faggy, so nice to hear from you. Well, so lovely to have such a nice international group. Beautiful.
I feel like I've been at a therapy session and I'm coming out all clean and wonderful. And
Ladies, can I just say, probably the Rebbitzin will not say this, but I feel that it's not a plug because I've done the course myself and I've done it a couple of times actually, and it's been amazing. The Rebbitzin does a course online now. You do it online, right, Rebbitzin?
Yes, if you want, I can actually give details because I've just created a special offer that I'm about to launch actually, and so we can offer this to your ladies if you like. I just mention the details. What I have presently is a course which is 8 two-hour sessions. They're all recorded, meaning you can hear it. You can hear as much as you like. They're recorded sessions that are sent. In addition to coming with 8 pre-recorded 2-hour classes on how to do this, and they come with many different guided imagery tracks. There are 2 half-hour one-on-one sessions included in the course to work on whatever is going on in your life, because everybody has a different life. Everyone has a different mind. So everyone is struggling with their own inner life and their own outer life. And so we work together on creating the kind of inner landscape in your mind that you want to live with, together with creating an approach to whatever is going on practically in your life at the time. So there's 2 half-hour sessions, one after about class 3, and then another one usually after class 7 or 8, so that we can really touch base. In addition, over the last, it's been now about 15 years that I've been teaching, I've got a collection of over 300 different guided imagery tracks that are for relaxation, for positive thinking, to help us to create, these kinds of emotions within ourselves. And I've set up, Baruch Hashem, a kind of inventory of over 300 different guided imagery tracks. And whoever joins this series gets access to all of those guided imageries for the duration of the time, to listen to them as much. I'm giving a class now, Sadik. I'm giving a class, Sadik. What happened? I can't go on the baby. Okay, we'll deal with it soon. Okay, I'm so. Excuse. Yes, Sadik. My son just sat at his baby rabbit. I am so sorry about this. Sadik, I don't know what to do, but I will help you very, very soon. I'm so sorry. We'll call the vet and we'll go to the vet soon, okay? Okay. So say Baruch Dayan Emes, and I will come and help you soon. I'll finish the class in 5 minutes. I'm so sorry.
Um,
So, will I be able to participate in these courses from London?
Yes, because they're first of all, they're all the classes are pre-recorded, but it does come with one live Zoom session, just like we have here during
Yes.
this Mei Tshuva. We're going to have one live session that everybody will be invited to join, so that there will also be sort of a community get together during the Mei Tshuva. But these 8 classes will be available to you to download and listen as much as you like, and then you'll schedule for yourself your private time to speak whenever you want.
Oh, it sounds very nice. But will you put these opportunities?
I will give them to Rebbetzin Shashua, and she will be able to send to everybody.
Thank you very much. So it'll all be accessible for somebody.
Absolutely.
Everything will be accessible.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to endorse what Joyce said. We both did the courses twice together. And Rebbetzin, I just want to tell you that Joyce and I do a chaprusa every day with your sefer.
Florence, it's so wonderful to see your face. So
lovely to see you too. So we learn every morning. So we remember you every day.
Beautiful. That's wonderful news.
Excuse me, I missed the very beginning, and perhaps you already did this, so then you can ignore me. But I'd love to know something about your background and who you are. I have never heard of you, or you'll excuse me.
Just 1 second, Sadik. We will call the vet in just a minute. Here. Okay. If it died, it died, and we'll bury it. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Sadik. Okay, I'll be out in 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. My background, I'm originally from the north of England, and I came to Eretz Yisrael for seminary when I was 18, and I've basically stayed here since then because I just didn't want to leave. It's too wonderful here.
Rebbetzin, I'm going to let you go because I can see that your son is in need of you. But just a quick question in the chat. Someone has asked, what is the price of the course?
Okay, I'm going to. I don't. It's $240 for the whole thing, but I'm going to give a special discount to this group. I'm going to speak to my coordinator, and I'll make sure that there will be a special discount available for members of this group. Okay?
Okay, so I'll put it out in the email on WhatsApp.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I realize you have to go. We enjoyed it.
Sorry about that, ladies. Okay. Got to call the vet. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joyce. Thank you, Joyce. Thanks a lot.
Does anybody know if this is
Joyce, thank you.
Joy.
Hi, Florence.
1 second, ladies, just before
Florence.
you go, our next week's guest is Rabbi Myers, an educator,
Oh, good, lovely.
Rav of Ma'or Shul, and he is amazing. So, but next week it will be 2 o'clock Israel time. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you so much.
Joyce, I haven't got WhatsApp. Joyce, I haven't got WhatsApp, so I'm only online really. Email address. And
receive the information every week, so you will receive it.
Okay, all right. So, and if I need to pay from here to there,
the Rebbetzin will work it out with you. That's nothing to do with me.
Okay, darling. All right, just give me the link and it's fine. Thank you.
It's recorded, and if you are all on Drops, if you receive information from Drops of Inspiration, you will receive the recording. So have a great week, everybody, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you,
Joyce.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.